We're now going to look at the bones and joints of the upper limb. We're going to start from the middle, and we're going to start again with the sternum, which is split into three sections: the manubrium, the sternal body, and then the xiphoid process at the bottom. This comes out into your clavicle, which is this bony ridge along here. The clavicle then comes in and attaches into part of the scapula called the acromion, and this forms the acromioclavicular joint. So acromion coming round into the clavicle, making the acromioclavicular joint at the top then. If we spin round to the back, we're then going to look at the scapula. And as we feel across the top of the scapula, we've got the scapular ridge, or the spine of the scapula. This then comes down into the medial border of the scapula and comes into this bit here, which is your inferior angle of the scapula. So this coming back up is your inferior angle, the medial border of the scapula, coming round to the spine of scapula, round into the acromion, creating the acromioclavicular joint along with the clavicle. We're then looking at the glenoid fossa, which is the socket in which the ball and socket of the shoulder joint sits into. So that's your glenoid fossa, which is the socket which the humeral head will sit into to form your shoulder joint. So we've got the inferior angle, medial border of the scapular ridge, or the spine of the scapula, coming into the acromion, the acromioclavicular joint, where it forms round at the front with the clavicle, coming round into the sternum, where we then have the manubrium, the sternal body, and the xiphoid process. We're now going to look at the bones of the upper limb. So we're going to start from that glenoid fossa in the scapula. That then sits in with the humerus, or the humeral head, which is going to act as the ball. So the glenoid fossa is the socket, and the humeral head is going to be the ball, creating that ball and socket joint, or the glenohumeral joint. The humerus comes all the way down, which is your main arm bone here, and that then comes into the elbow joint. And this is made up then of your radius, which comes down the side of the thumb, and your ulna, which comes down the side of the little finger. So the easiest way to remember this is that your radial pulse is where you would take it on the thumb side. So that's the side that your radius travels down. So we have the radius and the ulna helping to form the elbow joint along with the humerus. When we then come down into the wrist, we then have a collective group of little bones sitting in here, which are called your carpals. And these are lots of little individual bones, which we don't need to go into too much detail about, but as a collective group, you need to know them as the carpals, and these form the wrist joint. These then come into your metacarpals, which come along here, and these start to form the fingers. In the fingers, we call these the phalanges. And when we look at the thumb, we have two phalanges, which are where you see the knuckles. So there's one and there's two. But when we look at the other fingers, we have three. So when we bend them, we have one there, two, and then a third one right at the bottom. So working our way back up, we have the phalanges, where there's three in fingers 2 to 5, but only two in the thumb, and that's where you see the knuckles. We then have the metacarpals coming down. We have the carpals, which then come into the wrist joint. Coming up on the thumb side, we have the radius, and on the little finger side, we have the ulna. This then comes into the elbow joint. This is then going to be made up with the humerus, where the humeral head is the ball, and the glenoid fossa, which is part of the scapula, create the ball and socket joint, which is your glenohumeral joint.